didn't realize. I thought Nelson usually like tourism was ahead of us, but they're same time frame. I do remember the flight. Yeah, I just thought their renewal period was a little bit ahead of ours.
Okay, everyone's got new batteries. Yep, full.
Yeah, it does surprise me.
Full.
5 years.
And it is, yeah, it is totally different. Like I was talking to someone see it too. It is actually like you guys are really really don't usually get because the timing of it is actually not ideal for us. We were also doing a bunch of other things at this time of year. And she said it's actually you're quite peculiar. Most DMOs usually get started right at the beginning of the calendar year. So we actually start midway our our fiscal year is on the calendar, but our you went to San Francisco. Like, thankfully, you guys got
You won't remember me, but I remember you.
I want to make sure you can see.
All right.
I have to scooch over a smidge. You're not allowed to see anybody. Scooch over a smidge. Okay, there. And then I'm going to tip it to make sure it's up or down.
Oh, I told them they could stand.
Yeah, no, I want the video to look at him.
Oh, just for that.
Because if he stands, you have to come back behind them.
Oh, okay.
So the live stream could still see you,
Okay,
right?
maybe we should.
Well, Jessica, you can.
Yeah. I'm on it.
You are the master.
Good stuff.
So you guys put a lot.
I'm gonna move it. You tell me what to do. Because I remember.
It's okay right there.
Thank you. Do it again.
Oh, is this the camera here? Oh! Okay, so I have a question. If we stand to answer, is that going to be a problem? So no standing?
If you stand, you have to stand behind your seat so the video can still see you. Otherwise, it's going to
That's your bow?
Pardon? Pardon?
And my parents make me tell for their shirts.
Oh yeah, they were here in the beginning.
Yeah.
What do you prefer?
Yeah,
And we'll all do
exactly.
the same thing. Okay, so they prefer we sit.
Sitting is so much better.
If you really have to stand up, you have to do it behind your chair, or we're going to be looking at your belly button when you stand up.
Not just your belly button.
Check that zipper. Hey, girl and Penny. Oh yeah.
How's my double shirt?
There.
Yeah. Hi.
And then when Jason was talking to you earlier, when you talk on the mic, right up close, you do this. So we're not going to hear it like that. Put it down on that. Wave it up so if you need anything.
I need a highlighter.
Yeah. Oh, I'm on it.
Amazing. Thank you. Does anyone want hand sanitizer? You want hand sanitizer? You're good? Okay.
Yeah, good.
It smells nice though.
It does.
I know. Totally. I know, it's so dumb. I know. And I like wiggle too, so I'm like, oh man.
But when we got to know the right people with the right that trust, we were able to
Oh, Lincoln's down there. It's not on stage.
so should be actually um,
Everybody needs to go and sit down.
Just in case. Highlighter in case you need, a little post-it note.
Thank you.
Some snacks on the corner in case you want some broccoli in your teeth
We're
before
going to
we
get a
start.
15-minute coffee break and intermission.
Good question. No, I think we're just gonna hammer you the whole time and then kick you out.
We're ready to go. You need to go and sit down. What?
no, because I have COVID.
Well,
We
I
had
think he's
security.
going to put the house lights on. That's
Just
fine.
so that
These are okay.
Something quickly as well.
Mhm.
So when I've got, just so you know, I've got 4 views. One's basically Brady Bunch style, so you're all going to be in shot all at once.
Great.
Everyone's mic's live when that happens. And then you're going to individual views. So when you talk individually, it's just going to cut to you, and then
Okay.
just your mic will be live.
Okay.
So if you want to like talk and interject and stuff, try not to keep the conversations too back and forth too quickly, because I have to like click back and forth.
I think with Nicole not here, we can't go back and forth like that.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's got to be like one by one by one. Otherwise, it's not
And
respectful.
then it's going to be easy then. So just so you know, like when you're talking, you have the full coverage
Yeah.
online. Just so you're aware.
Okay.
Bring some people out.
Yeah. Oh, Anna, can you pass me my purse? My purse?
Turn this on.
Thanks. Awesome. Oh, you have a highlighter. I know, Jessica got me one.
I'll forget later, Corinne, so I'll say it now. My grandson said 45 minutes about taxes and taxes. He's in proper day school when you give him the doctor's class. So much about taxes.
Did he tell you though how I presented that? I had all this fake money.
Oh, he didn't say that.
Oh yes, I had all this fake money. I'm like, so you're gonna have a job, you're gonna make money, and the government's gonna take this for your property.
I think he gets enough of it from his grandpa, all the stuff about money.
Take your seats,
It's funny.
Can you hear me at the back? Good. Please get a warm seat. Get in. Thank you all for coming. This is a great turnout for our provincial all family-based meeting. And tonight this is being sponsored by the Creston Valley Chamber of Commerce, KES, and the Tourism Society. And we've had some massive amounts of help from Dylan and Jason up there. And I'd like a round of applause for them. A lot of our IT magic tonight is in honor of the fact that Nicole Charlwood is struggling with COVID and is home, and we've been able to bring her in by video conferencing. So we're hoping she lasts. So hang in there, Nicole. And I need to also tell you that there will be a bit of a time delay between her being asked something and responding because of the technology. So everybody, please just be patient, and everybody else is going to be patient as well. And so I just want to tell you this. Advanced polling starts tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. And so the advance poll is on the 10th to the 13th, and also the 15th and 16th. And voting day itself is on the 19th, and it's 8 in the morning till 8 at night, and all of that is taking place at the rec center. So with that, I'm going to get started for the evening. I'm going to introduce to you and let these folks introduce themselves. one last thing. There will be a couple of people circulating in the audience tonight. If you have burning questions that don't get asked, give a shout out to them, raise your hand, and there's two of them. They'll come and get your question. And if we have time at the end, we'll try to ask them. So I'm going to tell you that we're also acknowledging that we are on Aboriginal land, and we respectfully acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Ktunaxa Nation and the Akanuki Lower Kootenay Band. We are grateful for their stewardship and care of the land that we live on. And so our candidates are, from your left to right, we have Kelly Vandenberg, Brittany Anderson, Corinne Norrie, and Nicole Charlwood. Starting with Kelly, you have 3 minutes to introduce yourself and say whatever you'd like to say about why you're here tonight.
Great. Thank you, Rita. Thank you to everybody who took your time to come out tonight to listen to what we have to say. I want to acknowledge my colleagues as well for bravely stepping up and showing the leadership that they have by representing those values that they feel are important. My name is Kelly Vandenberg, and I'm offering myself and the Conservative Party of BC a choice in this election to bring you health, prosperity, and freedom. I am dedicated full-time to this cause, but I do still serve my responsibilities as an RDCK director. You can learn more about me with my bio and some background by going to my website at kellyv.ca. That's kellyv.ca. Why are we here tonight? Well, I'm just going to get right into it. People are dying on the streets with drugs and crime. The healthcare system is fractured and collapsing. People are facing an affordability crisis. The economy is in shambles. The resource sector is being destroyed. The Conservatives have put forward a serious vision of the future for measuring government effectiveness in delivering services and keeping people, communities, and the natural world healthy. Our plan includes getting BC's economy back on track, getting BC building, supporting farmers and agriculture, saving BC forestry, revitalizing BC mining to create a global superpower, providing affordability and reliable, independent energy, engaging in economic reconciliation with our Indigenous partners, getting our healthcare system restored, a dignity and care program for our seniors, getting drugs and crime off the streets, opening mental illness centers and addressing homelessness, restoring public safety, giving parents a say, giving parents a choice in education. We're also proud to be rolling out BC's Tech Future. For a common sense change for British Columbians, your choice to vote the Conservative Party of BC. Thank you. I'm Kelly Vandenberg.
Thanks, Kelly.
Next, we're going to hear from Brittany Anderson, the NDP.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Fantastic. My name is Brittany Anderson, and I'm really proud to be running for the BC NDP. This is in re-election. I've served as your MLA for the past 4 years, and it's been an incredible honor. I would like to thank the organizers. I know it was a lot of effort to put this on, and I'm very grateful for all their effort and work, and also to everyone that showed up tonight. This is really important in terms of democracy, and it's good to see a fairly full room here, and I'm really grateful that it's also being live streamed. So a little bit about me. I grew up in the Kootenays. I was 3 months old when my parents moved back. My dad was here as a child, and I love this place. I lived in the Creston Valley for a summer. I was the town's first water ambassador. I worked for the RDCK in the town, and I got to ride my bike all around this valley and educate people about water. And that summer, it was pouring in June, and so nobody was watering. And so I was actually able to go into the school systems and teach children about the water system and the importance of water. And then I also did a project with the local farmers to understand better their use of water. And I was really grateful how warmly everyone welcomed me in that work. It's also the very first day that I started. My mom drove me over from Nelson, and I walked into the cafe, and I saw this man that I knew was going to be a really important part of my life. And so, in Creston, not only that, I ended up going on a date with him at the Real Food Cafe, and that went well. And then he wanted to go on a hike, and I was talking to Daryl Plotnikoff, who of course has daughters around my age, and I asked if he knew him because he was a builder. And he goes, yeah, he's a really nice guy, and he comes from a really good family. You should be fine. So I'm glad I took that risk. We went on a beautiful hike on the ridge, and so Creston always has my heart because it's where I met my love. I have a Master's of Science in Environmental Science and Policy. I have worked for the Regional District in the Environmental Services Department. I've worked for young agrarians, supporting young farmers, people wanting to get into farming. I've also ran my own business where we did a sustainability certification. I did contract work with the Colorado Energy Office. And I was elected onto Nelson City Council in 2018, and then was asked to be the alternate director, and then my council appointed me to be the regional district director, where I briefly did that before I ended up running and being asked to run by Michelle Mungel, and then getting elected as MLA. And I'm really proud of the work New Democrats have done. We created the ALR, the Columbia Basin Trust. We kept Jumbo Wild, and I've been able to bring the Youth Climate Corps and spread it across the province. And I want to continue to work hard for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to hear from Corinne Maury, an independent candidate.
I am Corinne Maury, your independent candidate. I've been in the Kootenays for over 50 years, raised in Salmo on a farm. My husband is from New Denver. His family was from the Japanese that were interned there, so we lived there a couple of years and have been in Nelson for the last 35. I have 4 children, 3 of whom who live in Nelson. I have business background, building, construction, general contracting, land development. Recently, in 2015, I did my nursing, and I've worked in rural BC here as an emergency nurse and in some First Nations communities. I have a very high skill level in being able to scan my environment, pick up on what needs attention first, come up with a plan, and initiate that plan. Over the last few years, I have started to experience something I had never encountered before, and that was a feeling of being threatened in my own province. A feeling where I had a hard time identifying what was happening, but I was able to finally articulate it, that we're in a transition where our government is trying to take more authority over us than what I think we had intended it to have. We experienced controls over our own person. We've experienced escalating controls over our bank accounts and the amount that we're taxed and how much we have to work and what we're paying, and that we're moving slowly more into more poverty. And I decided that we're at a place in time where if we don't hold back that power that is trying to take everything that we are, we won't be able to stop it. So I started paying attention at the regional district. I recognized that there was no transparency, there was no recording of the meetings. We forced that through, asking several times for directors to record meetings and be transparent. And then when they didn't, we recorded them ourselves and put them up on YouTube so the public could have access to that information. I'm doing everything I can to make sure that you understand what is happening to us in a way that is big picture and also how it's going to relate to you individually. I am here because as an independent, I see that this is the only way that we can break this power of our political parties who are acting as a mob sometimes. And now it's time for representation for you.
Thank you, Corinne. And now we're going to hear from our sick candidate who's valiantly appearing on our video conference. So Nicole Charlwood, can we hear from you? You have 3 minutes. And now we're going to hear from our sick candidate who's valiantly appearing on our video conference. Nicole Charlwood, can we hear from you? You have 3 minutes.
Thanks so much, Rita, and thank you to the Creston Valley Chamber for hosting this event, and the other candidates, media, and voters for participating tonight. I'm disappointed I can't be there in person, but I'm grateful for the efforts that allowed me to join you today. My political journey began early and has taken many paths. I started with family discussions around the dinner table and a stint as a page in the Ontario Legislature in grade 7. Watching the government decide how much funding schools received for kids like me and seeing representatives work together to bring important services like accessible healthcare to their communities was when I first understood the impact the provincial government can have. I went on to study economics and international trade in the 90s when the warning signs were already clear. Climate change and the weakening of our social safety net would make things less and less livable for many. It has been like watching a slow-moving train wreck of interconnected crises coming our way. I've lived here for almost 25 years, raised my kids, and I've worked on the complex issues we face. When I was a city councillor in Nelson and the executive director of the West Kootenay Watershed Collaborative, I continue advocating and calling for a moratorium on clear-cut logging, having worked with Weimar and other Kootenay communities trying desperately to protect drinking water sources. I was honored to represent our region to the province and successfully advocated for the new BC Watershed Security Fund and continue to push for meaningful forestry reform. My work as the executive director of the West Kootenay Eco Society was focused on local food and energy security, with also efforts in old growth protection. I've also worked hard for electoral reform with Fair Vote Canada. One thing is certain, elections aren't set up to benefit the majority of us. They're structured to concentrate power in the hands of a few, and no single party should hold 100% of that power. One of the strategies of the BC Greens to combat this inequity of power is to ensure a robust third party is at the table to depolarize our politics and save us from becoming more and more like our neighbors to the south. For the past 10 years, the BC Greens have expanded our presence in the legislature and encouraged cooperation across party lines. With the work we've done and the momentum we've built in this riding, we have a strong chance to elect a Green MLA. We can afford free education, reliable transit, universal mental health care, and real poverty reduction. What we can't afford is business as usual. The other parties are tied to multinational corporations, sending our raw resources like trees and frack gas, and frankly, our tax dollars out of our communities and out of the province, leaving us with the damage and the costs of cleaning up their mess. I'm running for MLA to be your voice in Victoria, to be part of a skilled team holding the government accountable to you and to work for a brighter future for us all. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
And now we move to the questions. We have 4 categories chosen tonight, and our first one is healthcare. You'll have 2 minutes to answer these questions. Kelly, I'm going to ask you the first one. Issues have arisen over the last few years in Creston with the increase in the number of unhoused individuals, in particular those with mental health and substance abuse issues. How do you propose to respectfully and effectively address these issues?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you for the question. The interesting thing about being part of this position is going around and talking with people and talking with groups. And I call them my focus groups. And it really became clear to me that in Nelson we have a really big problem, particularly in the downtown core. And it's with the homeless and the drug addiction and that sort of thing. It's a super problem that affects everybody in different ways, and it's certainly an issue that's not easily dealt with. The Conservative Party would like to deal with this type of problem through addiction and recovery, offering a prevention program to ending decriminalization, stopping legal drug use, stop the addiction before it starts. Then with that is a harm reduction and accountability, make safe consumption sites a meaningful gateway to treatment. Dignified treatment and recovery is a part of this solution, cutting wait time to voluntary addiction treatment, integrate treatment into correctional healthcare system. Intervention, enacting what's called Christian's Law for compassionate intervention. And what that means is it's a story of a young kid from the age of 13 till when he died. His parents desperately were trying to fight and get him into some sort of addiction recovery treatment. The school couldn't tell them, the parents, of these issues. No matter where they went, they were not getting the help that they needed from the current government. The young lad died. And so John Rustad created a Christian's Law. And that means that any child, any parent can take their child in for involuntary treatment. And then the real support comes on the mental health side of things, because it's a one big circle. And that's all the time I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. I'm going to ask
candidates to respond to Kelly's comments and tell us anything that they wish to say about this topic. So I'm going to start with you, Nicole, and let's all remember our little time gap. But go ahead.
Thanks. There are overlapping concerns here. We're talking about housing, we're talking about serious mental health, and we're talking about a toxic drug supply. So all these things are compounding. I would like to address drug policy because it comes up a lot, and I feel like we are unique as a party. Because drug use is a health and social issue, and it's not a criminal one. It is clear that punitive measures such as prohibition fail to foster a safe and healthy society. A regulated drug supply and support for robust harm reduction services, while also investing in evidence-based treatment, prevention, and education are vital. We hear a lot about involuntary care, but what we really lack is voluntary care and the support services that people need who are facing complex crises. And that's where we need to be investing our money, because people who use drugs deserve the same access to resources, medical care, housing, love, dignity, and respect just as much as anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Corinne, would you like to respond?
Thank you. I have noticed a pattern where there are decisions that are made at a provincial level that end up being downloaded onto our local communities to deal with the aftermath. And it was 2016, 2017 that the government introduced the harm reduction model, where drugs were then given out freely under the guise that if we were giving safe drugs, there would be less harm to people. Except the reality is, it doesn't matter the safe supply, these drugs are drugs, that if are taking too much, you die. Harm reduction is not harm elimination. And the plan to continue flooding our province with these drugs leaves us with a continual flow of damage that when you're on the other end trying to mop up the devastated lives that have been impacted, it ends up being a lot of energy and resource that you cannot sustain. If you want to stop the devastation, you need to stop the supply of drugs from our government to people who end up being devastated through addiction and death. The overdose death rate has tripled since the implementation of this plan. It doesn't work. We need to stop the drugs. We need to put our resources into rehab, which it has not been. The BC Auditor General has already discovered that and put it in a report this spring, that program did not do what it was intended to do, which was to help addiction and to help those who suffer with addiction. We need to actually implement the things that will help.
Thanks, Corinne. Brittany, would you like to respond to what you've heard so far?
The impact that the toxic drug supply is having in our communities, and we also can see the challenges that homelessness presents. And so when our government got into power 7 years ago, there was essentially no mental health system. So we've been working on building that system into a seamless system that people don't have to pay to get the care and the support they need. So for example, in Cranbrook, we have we partnered with the Tanaha, and there's complex care housing for people in Creston. And so these are the people that are the most challenging to house. When I was touring a site with Premier David Eby in Vernon, there was a man who was homeless for 20 years. They got him stabilized, they got him into housing, they got him stabilized into housing, treatment, and 2 years later, he was running a food program, delivering 200 meals a day. So if we're able to provide supports for people, people want to contribute. They want to be members of their society that are contributing. And that's what we're able to do when we have those systems of support in place. I've worked hard to bring Minister Mike Farnworth here and the Attorney General here, and working with Valley Community Services to address the needs of a unique population to this valley with large families and really diverse needs. And so we had extra funding that was very, very flexible, so that it was led by experts, but with input from the community to support individuals and families get the support they need in terms of mental health, in terms of finding employment, and so that they were able to, so we're trying to catch people before they end up in crisis. Another example of that is the Tanaha. We've provided them funding for youth that are looking for jobs. We're providing them funding and that support, so they're able to get jobs early and contribute into their communities. Thank you.
Our second question on the healthcare topic is this. What action would you take to improve primary health care in Creston? For example, doctor and nurse shortages, the need for more long-term care beds, using a community health center approach, privately funded health care, better transportation to specialists, you name it. Tell us what you think would help to improve primary health care in Creston. And we'll start this time with Corinne.
Pre-pandemic, we had 2,000 empty positions for nursing. We currently have 6,000. We have a mass exodus of healthcare professionals outside of this province because of new legislation that has come down, the Healthcare Professions Act, which is very punitive and dictatoring to professionals in terms of if you do not comply with everything the government tells you, you now will be subject to jail time and hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. There is a mass exodus of healthcare professionals outside of this province. How are we going to return service back here? The whole health authority system is at least 40% goes to administration and management. In talking with nurses in New Denver and Nakusp, for 6 nurses on shift, you have 5 managers. We have an overabundance of management, high-paid management, and a lack of focus on what provision of care is. Now, at least I know what is necessary to provide that. I actually was on John Rustad's healthcare reform policy team, where we came up with the whole policy for healthcare reform with doctors, nurses, and healthcare analysts. It was unfortunate that he removed most of the people off that team after he presented the policy to the public. However, what we can do is there are nurse practitioners who are funded under the Kootenay Boundary Family Practice Model. They just don't have a place to practice. And that is something that I will do. I will open up satellite offices in every community so that these healthcare professionals who are forced into telehealth will actually have a place that they can come and see you in person.
Nicole, I'd like to get your response to what you've heard so far.
Thanks, Rita. We'd like to point out the BCNDP approach is to let corporations fulfill healthcare services and keep the status quo system for primary care. Green's approach is to prioritize building community health centers, as you suggest. Thanks, Rita. Throughout BC to increase access, lowering bureaucratic barriers for healthcare professionals, and offering robust preventative and primary mental health care. Every British Columbian should have a home for the majority of their care and have access to doctors, nurses, mental health professionals, and specialists like dietitians and physios, all within our communities. Right now, over 1 million of us do not have a doctor. The BC Green Party is reintroducing the Dogwood model, a transformative plan to provide every resident with a primary care home, ensuring accessible, team-based, long-term care. We will establish a network of centers across the province. The goal is 93 next year. This model eliminates complicated and lengthy referrals, ensuring timely, comprehensive care all in one place. The model is part of BC Green's larger vision for addressing healthcare holistically by focusing on preventative, primary care, and the social determinants of health. Let healthcare workers provide care and not have to deal with the challenges of running a small business. What feels like a shortage of healthcare workers can also be attributed to as mostly a symptom of a system that prevents healthcare workers from providing care. We will reduce the number of health authorities to decrease bureaucracy and shift funding to hire more boots on the ground in community. This will help us organize care through community health centers and increase supports for transit to and from care out of our communities, ensuring continuity of care and an increase in frontline workers. Greens will redirect funding to proactively help keep folks on healthy paths to wellness, reducing the pressure and expense of running emergency rooms for all of our rural healthcare. Thank you.
Kelly, I'd like your response to what you've heard so far.
Thank you, Rita. There's a lot of opportunity to fix the inefficiencies that are here amongst us today. Everybody has a story to tell. I'm sitting a long time in waiting rooms trying to talk to somebody about booking an appointment all the way to Kelowna, driving to Kelowna to make an appointment. The Conservatives would like to offer a patients first model. It's universal health care for everyone under a single payer system that delivers care throughout public and non-government facilities. direct funding to the front lines, stop ER closures, transparent and accountable BC healthcare in reporting patient outcomes, health services performance reviews, modernize healthcare technologies. We have to start reducing the long wait times in emergency rooms. We've got to get our doctors and nurses back. Mandates and restrictions are gone with a conservative government. Rural reward and remote healthcare staff appreciation for those that are outside the centers. Get rid of the bureaucracy and the lack of focus on empowering healthcare professionals in the current system. Implement community health centers and mental illness centers. That's my response.
Thank you.
Brittany, your comments, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. What concerns me with Kelly's response is it sounds like the Conservatives want us to pay for healthcare. I will fight every day to make sure we have a strong public healthcare system. I have been the co-chair of a Rural Caucus for the last 2 years, and we've been working collectively. So those are the BC NDP MLAs. We meet once a week when we're in Victoria, as needed when we're home in our ridings. And we came up with a list of key priority areas. One of them was putting a rural lens on all government decision making. That's in process now and supported by David Eby and included in the pillars in the platform. Another was having workers, if you're working for the province, that you can work from anywhere. That's happening now. And I was just at an end. The other three were healthcare, transportation, and transportation for healthcare. And so David Eby was here last week, and I got to stand beside him here in the Kootenays, where he announced that we will be paying up front if people have to travel to see a specialist, get imaging, get treatment or surgery in a place like Cranbrook, Kelowna, or Vancouver, so that people will not be out of pocket. This is an equity issue. I know you need more long-term beds here in Creston. When we got into government, the Conservatives had fired a bunch of healthcare workers and were closing hospitals. They tried to close Nelson, and it was a bunch of pregnant women that had to stand up and fight to keep their maternity ward open. We are building hospitals. Thank you. We are building hospitals. We are hiring more doctors and nurses than any other province. We're attaching more people. By the end of 2025, on the trajectory, we should have every person that's on that list attached to either a doctor or a nurse practitioner. We're also building the first medical school in 55 years in Western Canada, and this should have happened a long time ago. Thank you.
Our next topic is local housing. And our first question goes to Corinne. And you have 2 minutes to tell us about your thoughts on this topic. Creston, like all other communities, is experiencing a housing shortage. What is your policy to increase the housing supply for all income levels? And please be specific.
As a builder for several decades, I've noticed that there has been an increase in regulation around building requirements. Now, it used to be that we all followed the building code, and some municipalities are still able to do that. But now there has been increased regulation around trying to make things more efficient, and so we've introduced another program called the STEP Code, which has really escalated costs. Now, I'll give you an example. There was a recent change in the building code where now they want one living space in your home to not go above 26 degrees. Now, I'm not sure who decided that if you end up in a room at 27 degrees, that this is going to harm your health. But the added costs in air conditioning and potentially HVAC units is just one component. One thing that they implemented could easily add another $5,000 onto the cost of a build. We need to stop over-regulating things. We can come up with simple builds that don't require massive engineering. This has escalated all the requirements around engineering. And we can come up with simple structures to get people into the housing market. But not only that, we need to start focusing on rent-to-own programs. It is not good enough that we are just creating a housing market where people are forced into perpetual tenancy. There is no motivation to invest in yourself if everything you do goes to somebody else. We can fund, we can create policies where there is backing that people can put money towards rent to own that could roll into a mortgage. I've checked this out with credit union managers. It is possible. We need to just change our thinking. We need to put money back into the pockets of people, and we need to stop over-regulating things.
Nicole, I'm going to ask you for your comments next on anything that you've heard from your previous two speakers. Nicole, I'm going to ask you for your comments next on anything that you've heard from your previous two speakers.
So I'd like to say this isn't just a housing crisis, it's a crisis of equality. Housing has become predominantly a way to make money, and very little of what is available is affordable, yet we deserve safe, secure, and affordable housing. Because of decades of underinvestment in public supported housing, with including wraparound services, access to a good home has become unattainable for many, and we're now in a local crisis level. BC should be the best place to live, not just for investors, but for everyone as a human right. We need real solutions to prioritize secure, affordable housing for all of us. The Greens' approach is to focus on non-market solutions that will result in co-ops and affordable housing, rental units, and funding for renter supports with commitment of 26,000 non-market units every year, just to catch up to what the NDP have already promised us in past elections. We will increase local community consultation and design to influence the way BC Housing is involved in local projects. Let's include the people on the ground when we are making decisions about housing. We will do support for renters by controlling rent increases and creating standards for evictions. We will increase shelter aid for elderly renters and improve residential tenancy branch to address disputes between landlords and tenants. We will support homeowners and landlords to renovate. We will support local builders to get trained staff they need and affordable materials. With hundreds and thousands of British Columbians just one paycheck away from losing their homes, the BC Greens are taking immediate action by proposing $1.5 billion investment into nonprofit housing fund that will reinvest returns from interest-free loans, reducing the annual billion investment over time. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. These two. Next, I'd like to hear from Kelly.
Thank you, Rita. I can't disagree with a lot of what Corinne said. I just got my final occupancy a week ago. Spent the last year building my house. And yes, it was to the step code program. 1920 square foot, it's a rectangle, is all it was. There was a lot of surprises trying to meet that step code. Engineering fees alone jumped to $8,000. We could have never anticipated that. It is difficult to build in this market. Conservatives would like to offer some solutions, removing some of the NDP taxes on housing. We want to create a civic infrastructure and renewal fund, $1 billion per year for municipalities. Put in a rent to help those people with renter and homeowner rebates, and that'll be rolled out in a budget in 2026. Approve homes in months, not years. Conduct a forensic audit into BC housing, including relationships with politically connected nonprofits. Red tape reduction, huge, just too much red tape. We want to identify land outside the ALR for potential building. We want a commitment to review the Agricultural Land Commission as well for any opportunities for modernizing. Conservatives have a plan when it comes to housing shortage, and by getting our economy back on track and getting BC building. Thank you.
Brittany, your comments.
Thank you. Well, I'm interested to hear that the Conservatives are finally interested in housing because when they were in power for 16 years, they thought, okay, we'll just let the market decide. That was when John Rustad was in government, when he was a cabinet minister. And you know what happened? We had a ton of foreign investment, drive up homing prices, people were flipping, there was speculation all over the place, and now we're feeling that crunch here today. We are building, David Eby is being celebrated across North America for his plan to build housing for people. We are using every tool in the toolbox. Airbnb is a good example. So you can Airbnb out your own home or your primary residence or a suite in that residence, but you can't be a corporation that buys up a bunch of different Airbnb or a bunch of different homes and then have people just Airbnb them. I'm sorry, these homes are for people until we can get the vacancy rate at a manageable level. We have built more homes in the last few years. And I know in Creston, I've got to sit down on several occasions with Mayor Taboon and council and talk about the incredible plan that they have. I am so proud of the work that they're doing, and I often get messages from Mike, who is the CAO, and he's like, Brittany, I need help with something on here. And I'm like, absolutely, I'll respond to him and I'll bring it up to either the staff in the minister's office or the minister directly himself when there's been challenges around that. I am dedicated to working on making sure that there's more homes for people in Creston, and that includes everyone. We know that there was an emergency winter shelter. We are working on short-term and long-term solutions. You know, I met with the Den Society and I also met with business owners, and everyone wants to see solutions, but we need to ensure that we're working together. In Nelson, when we've had challenges around this, like when we're gonna find a space, I want something that the Chamber is proud of, Nelson Cares is proud of, Anchors is proud of, and so here you have to bring everyone to the table to find solutions for people. That's community driven. Thank you.
Thanks. I'd like to turn now to the nonprofit housing sector, otherwise known as the social sector, the non-market people like low-income families, the disabled, the elderly. How do you propose to fund that particular branch of the housing market? And I'll start with Nicole.
Thanks, Rita. So essentially how we would pay for it is by applying taxation. Now wait for it, don't panic. A 2% tax on residential property values over $3 million and double existing provincial property tax rates for homes valued above 3 million, 4 million, and 7 million, ensuring high value properties contribute more. This is a big piece of how we will pay for the social housing I talked about in my last answer. Thank you.
Nicole. Corinne, would you respond to that question?
I was actually speaking with Jim Reimer, who runs the Share nonprofit over in Nelson. And his experience is that there's a lot of money that is coming through BC Housing. The issue is, and through federal programs. The issue is not the funding. The issue is there are no operators to actually manage these projects and to keep them running efficiently. So what we have is a human resource strain. Now, interestingly, BC Housing bought a hotel over in Nelson, over $3 million. And even though it had 30 units, only 7 were rented out over the last 2 years. Jubilee Manor has had 6 beautiful suites in their facility that should have been available for seniors, but they have refused to rent them out since 2010. I'm not sure why, even though we do have available housing, there is obstacles to people actually being able to use it. And so part of what my role has been uncovering this information, Because most of the time we're told that things are working well and our money is going towards programs that are actually working. And instead we're finding out that that's not the case. So from my understanding, the issue is not the money. The issue is in actually having people that can manage these projects, make sure that they are continue to be managed, not just the building part of it, but maintaining the rental stuff afterwards. And what we need to do is be training people to take on these skills so that when we have these projects, we actually have people that are qualified that can run them.
Thank you, Green. Brittany, what do you have to say?
So the provincial government relies heavily on partnerships. Partnerships with First Nations, partnerships with local governments, and partnerships with nonprofits to deliver the housing. And the benefit of this is that you have local people making decisions for their community on what their community needs are. And we're also making sure that we're investing in trades. My partner, who I talked about, who's sitting here in the front row, he's actually on his way to go help somebody whose house he built 20 years ago and now needs to make it more accessible. And so I know the challenges that he's faced on the job site with finding enough skilled workers. And so we're investing, we're training more people so that we have the carpenters, the electricians, the plumbers to build the homes that we need for people. We're making sure that for instance, again, like Airbnb, for example, my friend who is a teacher here in Creston, because of those rules, an Airbnb was converted into a home, and that's where him and his 3 daughters live. So again, we have to use every single tool in the toolbox. We're looking at creative solutions. We are the first provincial government in Canada to build housing on reserve, even though this is clearly a federal responsibility. But when the federal government continues to fall behind and fail people, we have continued to step up and build housing. And so David Eby, this has been his laser focus. He worked on the downtown east side. He knows what it means when people don't have access to appropriate, affordable housing. And so we need housing for everyone. I found it really interesting, that comment about Interior Health and Jubilee Manor. We know that there's units here that need a little bit of upgrading, and they could be long-term care housing. One of the things I was the most excited to see in our platform was that we're going to be reviewing the health authority to make sure that it is effective and delivering the results that we need in our healthcare system. Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. Kelly, your comments on this topic.
Thank you, Rita. I will say that Corinne did do a good job of wrapping up a lot of important details in there. I would add, though, however, that the housing isn't getting built. The services and the resources available to municipalities that are actually asked to be responsible for this, they're not there. BC Housing is not working with the local municipalities the way they should be. Conservative government would want to invest into social housing groups and give them the training and the resources that they need in order to start satisfying this. As I mentioned before, looking for other areas in which to develop and build is a priority as well. Here in Creston, there's not a whole lot of choice that we have. But I think that if we can identify that land that's available and provide that training and resources to the local level, and be very clear that the Conservatives are not wanting to put it all on the local level, because it's out of their area of responsibility. This is a provincial requirement, and that's all I would like to add. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kelly. I have a Creston question for all of you. Please tell us, what is your opinion of the Creston Housing Corporation? Let's start with Corinne.
Creston Housing Corporation. I've never heard of that. Why? How come I've never heard of that? Where should I have heard of that? Where do I find information on that? Does anybody know? The mayor does. So, Mayor, why don't we know? Would you like me to answer?
Can we just have a little order here for a moment, please? Go ahead, Brittany, answer the question if you can.
So the town of Creston has been working really hard on the Creston Housing Corporation, and they've been talking about it in public meetings. So although maybe some folks in here in this room haven't heard about it, what it is it's modeled after what they've done in Whistler. And in Whistler, when it was in the 80s, they were developing Whistler as a resort community. So they went on tour, so locals went on tour to some of the large resorts in the States, and they noticed there was no children. And that was because the people that worked at the resort, they couldn't afford to live there. So they were living an hour away in a different town. And so Whistler decided that they would take it upon themselves to ensure they had their goal of 80% of the people that work in Whistler live in Whistler. So they started the Whistler Housing Authority. And so what that is Whistler is investing in housing. People that, although it's very expensive to live in Whistler if you're buying a home, you can get housing if you live there and work in that community. And so what Creston is doing is actually really remarkable. They're going to spearhead housing development in the Creston Valley. And they want to have childcare spaces in that housing as well. So they have a proposal for a fairly large housing development. Mayor, how many units? 42 units, and that's just the start. And so that when I was talking about meeting with council, meeting with the CAO, that's some of the work they've been doing. I've looked at their plans, they're fantastic. They will have some set aside for things like nurses. So if a nurse gets hired or a doctor gets hired, that they'll be able to be housed right away by the community so that isn't what impedes them coming to this valley before they're able to find a home, or perhaps they want to stay in that housing. There'll be housing for seniors, housing for people with disabilities, housing for families, and I think this is an incredible model, and I want to applaud the mayor and council for their work on this. Thank you.
Do you want to have a go at it, Kelly?
Well, I think Brittany covered it off pretty good. The only other thing is that the regional district is sitting at the table on this as well. It's not, and it is great work. It's an amalgamation of a number of non-profit groups that wanted to do the same thing. And so it was putting them all under one umbrella so that they could get organized. The town of Creston has done a lot of the legwork on this. And this is something that's going to be coming. And can I say where it's going to be? Is that okay?
Yeah, it's announced.
It's right next to the RCMP station. So a great project. A lot of work went into it, and a lot of collaboration. And it's an example of what you can do when you get together and get to the right people talking in the same room.
Nicole, do you have any comments? Are you familiar with this? Was a skill testing question, I have to admit. Nicole, do you have any comments you'd like to make about the Creston Housing Corporation? Nicole, do you have any comments? Are you familiar with this? Was a skill testing question.
With an advantage of going last. I can look all smart. No, I'm teasing. I have been paying attention with the homelessness crisis and overlapping issues in Creston in particular going on at the same time. This has been a challenge for all of our communities in this riding, and I know folks have found it challenging to work with BC Housing to get what we need in our communities. Nelson has done a great job with Nelson Cares, and it's good to have another round of advocacy for Creston in particular. Anytime local communities take responsibility for development and housing, I think the results end up being better. And so I too am in support, as the other candidates have expressed that know about it, and want to acknowledge the hard work that the community has put into it. I know the discussions between the various groups have been challenging. And I encourage everybody to stay in those challenging conversations because that's when genuine change can happen. It's not easy, and I hope to be an ally in all of that work soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
So may I then, since some of the answers didn't actually address the Creston Housing Corporation and address more housing, would I be able to just add in a minute?
You may add whatever you'd like, Curry.
Thank you. So what I find is across the region, different communities are really pulling together to find solutions to this. Now, I know in Nelson, the Chamber of Commerce has been working, trying to provide a new housing project over there that is supposed to be really focused on the working people. One of the things that we've noticed with businesses, they're really struggling because they can't keep employees. And so this focus on being able to provide affordable housing that the communities are involved in is imperative to keeping small business going. Now, what we have, though, is an issue with the provincial government now moving in this Development Act where they are superseding municipal authority over development. So in Nelson, they just approved that every lot can be triple or quadruple units on it, and they've taken away the ability for the public to engage in this. Now, what we need to always be aware of is the responsible infrastructure management that needs to go alongside. Sometimes discussions around sewage and water are not addressed at the same time that the ideals for developing are. So I would just ask the public to please be aware that when there are these development ideas coming through into your communities, that you're paying attention to make sure that your local government is ensuring that there is adequate infrastructure to support that. Thanks very much.
Rita, is that young man over there okay? Sitting up front?
He's doubled over.
Yeah. Are you okay over there?
Are you okay? Okay. Thanks, Kelly, for pointing that out. I just want to remind you all that we're in Creston and our questions are really focused on Creston. So when we asked the question about the Housing Corporation, it was specifically to find out whether anybody had really checked in to see what's going on in Creston. And since you had a bit of a précis about that from the NDP candidate, I think it reminds you that if you want to know anything about what's going on, there are sources of information that are available from the town itself, from the RDCK, and from their websites, or from talking to people who populate those offices. So I just really encourage the audience to know that there are plans in place to try to house people of all income levels. That was the nature of the question. So look into it if you're interested in this kind of stuff. And our next topic is our local economy. That's like Creston, folks. So here's your question. Local small and medium-sized businesses are struggling in Creston. What can you do to support these businesses to recruit, train, and retain employees? So let's start with you, Kelly. What would you have to say about that?
Thank you for the question, Rita. Affordability is critical. We got to get the economy back up on track. We've got to create private sector jobs, focusing on growing private sector, conduct taxpayer respect audits to eliminate wasteful government. Once again, it's back to the red tape. We've got to reduce that. Supporting small business and entrepreneurs is critical. Reducing the small tax to their business, cracking down on crimes, not so much here, but elsewhere is very important. Target cities to reduce approval times for building permits and business licenses. We're going to cut the carbon tax. We're going to give people the chance to put that money back in their pocket. I think that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Kelly. Nicole, would you answer that question for us, please? Make comment on Kelly's remarks, if you will.
Hi, thanks. Sorry, it's tough for me to comment on all the comments made by others. So if I miss something, I am going to talk a bit more about our perspective. Just as individuals struggle to invest in themselves while worrying about rent, small and medium businesses find it difficult to invest in capital and personnel amid rising costs and uncertainty around consumers' ability to afford their products. We continue to subsidize highly profitable, polluting industries at the expense of small and knowledge-based technologies and businesses. For instance, fracking receives water licenses for more favorable rates than our local consumption. Key local industries such as hospitality and construction are facing challenges in attracting skilled labor, while young people are struggling to find meaningful employment that offers a good standard of living. What we know is that there is a growing demand for incentives beyond financial compensation, with many workers seeking better work-life balance, support for childcare, and increased leisure time. Specific policy announcements that we have include creating sustainable career opportunities and workforce development, introducing a careers program for food, beverage, and hospitality sector, providing job seekers with training, mentorship, and job placements in British Columbia's food manufacturing and hospitality businesses. We will prioritize local businesses and resources to boost the provincial economy. We'll update procurement policies to ensure local contractors and resources benefit first in public projects and government contracts. We will expand the NBC investment opportunity with an additional focus on supporting rural British Columbia, ensuring equitable access to investment resources. We will amend and expand the community grants program, limiting eligibility of businesses headquartered outside of British Columbia to prioritize local business support. Thank you.
Thanks. Brittany, would you like to comment on this?
Of course I would. So when we're talking about small businesses and the economy in Creston, I think the first thing that we really need to look around and is our farmers. How are we supporting our farmers? We're incredibly grateful that we have this growing region, or the Creston Valley in our region, that produces a ton of incredible food, both for us here locally, but also for export to markets. So ensuring that the local farmers are able to get access to land. I used to work for Young Agrarians, and the provincial government has supported the land matching program. So if you have land that you want farmed, or if you're someone that is looking to farm but doesn't have access to land, it is a free service, kind of like a matchmaking service. Well, we'll find the right farmer for the right land. We're also supporting, so that's, I would say, agriculture. There's a ton of supports for agriculture that we've been providing, and then there's more to come in our platform. I also want to talk about training, and so we're investing heavily in our colleges, our rural colleges. I was just at an announcement with Rolly Russell, who's the Parliamentary Secretary for Tourism, and all of the colleges, including Paul Voigt, who's the head of Kootenay Rockies, and it was a partnership. It was the first time the colleges had worked together, and it was on an economic development micro-credential, so that people who are already professionals that are working can get this micro-credential and then be better suited in order to support the economic development in their region. We provide funding supports to KES, to Valley Community Services, and for the Tanaha for their employment programs. So they're able to provide people who face barriers to employment support so that they can find a job that suits them, and employers can find workers that they desperately need. So I think that we really need to take a multi-pronged approach, and we also need to make sure that we're supporting businesses. I was a small business owner. I also attended the Women in Business Summit here in Creston, and I will continue to fight for small businesses. Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. Your turn, Corinne. What would you like to do about this?
I came through town a couple of times and went door knocking on businesses, and this is what they told me. That the minimum wage, the way it is administered or designated, isn't working. So it's like, what, $17.50, something like that right now? If they pay a 12-year-old minimum wage, it's the same as paying a single mom with 2 kids. It's the same amount. And they are not getting the same benefit from hiring a 12-year-old as they get from an adult. So it was expressed that minimum wage needs to be a graduated program, that when you are coming into just learning how to work and you're still, in training, there should be tiers of how much you get paid so that the employer is actually getting good value from the money that they're spending. The farmers have said that they are not being able to get workers, and what they would like to see is better education programs where people learn on the farm with them. So they would benefit from the extra workers on the farm, and the workers on the farm would benefit from learning how to do the farm hands-on experientially. Currently, the average age of a farmer in this province is 55, and they're finding that their children are not interested in taking over the farm. And so we are going to have some problems very quickly because there is no one that is stepping up to take over this industry. Every single business and farmer told me that the carbon tax is making their business unsustainable. And if this continues, they will not be able to continue business.
Thank you. Costs of operation, including shipping and the cost of utilities, are onerous for businesses in Creston. How does your policy make costs more manageable here in Creston? Let's start with Nicole.
Thanks, Rita. On Business Walk with the Creston Valley Chamber of Commerce this summer, we heard over and over again that small businesses cannot afford to pay their staff a living wage and therefore have a difficult time getting the help they need. I would advocate for a pilot program here in the Kootenays for a guaranteed livable income for farmers, for people with disabilities, seniors, youth aging out of care, and of course in support of small businesses. They really like this idea. And what I like about it is that it removes red tape from all those folks and gets them out of poverty in many cases and takes that responsibility off of businesses and back into the hands of government. It's cheaper in the long run for all of us and more effective at mending our social fabric as well. It creates a foundation for stability that we can build upon and have a thriving society that takes and this all takes enormous pressure and expense off of small business. Also, acknowledging and supporting a rural economy that is based on local businesses, and also the services sector is our biggest economic driver locally and will benefit more people and keep financial benefits at home while also caring for our environment. Farming, wildfire mitigation, improved frontline healthcare are all strong economic drivers that support local businesses by bringing more money into the community. Thank you.
Kelly, would you like to make comments about the cost of operating a business?
Yes, thank you, Rita. It's probably going to be fairly consensus, but get rid of the tax, cut the red tape, reduce the regulations. And what we're seeing that's working really nicely with groups like the Chambers is investing into local economy through training and resources. I think that's really the place to start. That's the only thing I could really add. I think it's very important.
Thanks, Kelly. Brittany, I'll hear from you next.
Thank you very much, Rita. So when I was on the Creston business walk, I found it really fascinating. I ended up going into some businesses that I hadn't really noticed before and met some very fascinating people. I'm forgetting the man's name. He lives in Yak, but he has the body shop there. And he was also talking about shipping. And that was some of the challenges to get parts there and to also find workers that wanted to help him in that shop. And so we were talking about different training opportunities. He's partnered with colleges, but so looking for connecting businesses with opportunities, say at the colleges. Also talking about food security. They're talking about shipping and getting products from here to market. And we do have a rural economic development program that invests in ideas that nonprofits, First Nations, and communities have. And if there's a challenge around shipping and getting things to market, I think it would be incredible if the people of Creston sort of worked on that problem to solve it, and then we would be happy to support them if I'm reelected as MLA with that REDIP grant and making sure that it's successful so that we're able to solve those problems. I think another huge investment will be with the highway realignment. In order, like the downtown core right now, Jen Comer, I remember when I first got elected, she's like, let's go to Jimmy's Pub, let's sit outside. And it was truck after truck after truck. And it's loud. And it's not, it's a beautiful patio, but the sound and the pollution and the noise doesn't make it an ideal situation. So by realigning the highway, there's tremendous opportunities to include Market Park, make it a more pedestrian-friendly zone. And what I see in Creston is local businesses, they're just getting better and better and better. I mean, the brewery, you go in there any given night, it's thriving. You go to the Good Company where they serve amazing coffee. I think that's the nicest coffee shop views probably around. So by investing in local businesses and economies and supporting the ideas from here is how we can best support local businesses. Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. Corinne, you're up.
It is universal that every single resident in this community knows that the carbon tax is killing us. Now, this was implemented by government, and they knew what it was doing to us, and they won't stop. And we're only at a third of what they're intending to tax us by in the next few years. These kinds of decisions are what are totally destabilizing our ability to be independent and prosperous. And we're under the power of governments who, even though they know they are intentionally harming us, continue. Now, the other thing I've been paying a lot of attention to is property taxes. I've been in every single regional district meeting for the last year and a half. I've gone over the financials with accountants, financial analysts. I've been reviewing, I've been doing my best to educate the public on complex topics of how things are managed. From 2016, 28 million was collected in taxes. By 2023, it was 40 million. Wages in 2016 was 13 million. By 2023, it was 27 million. We have mismanagement at our local government level. We had 10 years where the chief administrative officer was also functioning as the chief financial officer. No oversight. This went on for 10 years. Nobody said a thing. Now, I don't know whether he did anything or not, but it put the public at risk. The first thing we need is a forensic audit at the RDCK to ensure that our local money is being managed. And then we need to start looking at what's going on at our provincial government, because I can tell you the same kind of mismanagement is going on. And it's us who's paying the cost.
Thank you, Corinne. Our last category is climate action. And Kelly, this is your question. Please explain the carbon tax and tell us how it works, its pros and its cons.
People need a lesson in that? Well, I don't think it's effective. I don't think it's doing what it was intended to do. It is a collection of, it's paying for the use of burning fossil fuels, essentially. But it's ignoring what industry and technology is doing out there today. It's making it economically impossible for us to get ahead. It's keeping us poor. I believe that the change in climate and environmental stewardship go hand in hand. And there's the wildfires, for example. People talk a lot about the carbon, the CO2 emissions. The wildfires are 164% of what the CO2 was for 2023. There's programs when it comes to climate change or the change in climate that we can be doing, that we are doing, and that's wildfire mitigation type of stuff. Proper environmental stewardship, energy transition, eventually through innovation and technology. We have to be very careful and are cautious in our approach on how we travel down that path, so that we don't lose our economic. We have to get our economy going. This is really just stopping it short, and until the Conservatives want to put in some policies that allow for that understanding of solid environmental stewardship, but that good, sound, principled energy transition plan. But I think everybody knows what the carbon tax does.
Thank you. Brittany, could you please explain how the carbon tax works?
Yeah, so it was actually when Rustad was in government that the Liberals brought in the carbon tax. It is a conservative economic tool that puts a price on pollution. And it has been an effective tool, particularly when you look at large industry. And it is large industry that pays the bulk share of the carbon tax, even when we can feel it in our pocketbooks or we go and pump gas. It is actually the largest producers of GHG emissions, and because it costs them so much money, they're making business decisions to decrease the amount of GHG emissions. They're doing things like in mining, they're using large electric vehicles as haul trucks. And so when we're able to force industry to shift and to change and to lower their emissions, I believe we are succeeding, because climate action is real. Although John Rustad does not believe in climate science, I think we've all experienced the wildfires. We know, if you've been in this valley for decades, you've seen it yourself. Now, right now, the carbon tax is a federal program. We have our own provincial program, but we just can't back out of it. If the federal government changes, we will absolutely continue to, if the federal government changes their decision and cuts the carbon tax, what we will do is we will review, so we will make sure we're making the largest industrial polluters pay, but for people that are struggling, we need to also make sure that it is affordable. And so looking at home heating, for example, or at the pump, we will not have a carbon tax for consumers, but large industry continues to have to pay. And that is critically important if we want to reduce our GHG emissions. And we also have a call to power right now as part of that transition. So we are looking at, we're asking First Nations and businesses to tell us how they can provide clean energy, and we're going to be working with those partnerships to double our power generation by 2050, and that is going to be a good investment decision in British Columbia, because we're also going to be selling that power to our neighbors that right now are using coal. So thank you.
Nicole, would you like to comment on the carbon tax? What is it? How does it work? And its pros and cons. Nicole.
Thanks. Some of those promises sound good. I would like to talk about how unfair the carbon tax has been applied, and to point out that the fossil fuel industry was responsible for 14.8 million tons of emissions in 2021. And under the current model of the carbon tax, most of these emissions were exempt from the carbon tax, despite what Brittany Anderson has just said. The BC Greens would ensure that these emissions were treated the same as all other emissions in British Columbia. The revenue from these taxes will continue to be rebated to British Columbians who are already paying the price for climate change. We need to increase the cost to polluters, and we need to, as individuals, see an increased return because of the costs we're seeing due to climate change. I think we want to continue planned increases in the tax. We want to remove annual emission limits for industry established under the output-based pricing system. We want to include emissions relating to venting and non-compression and non-processing activities in the oil and gas sector. And at the end of the day, we need reform to this tax that has been poorly administered and left us feeling unfairly impacted. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Corinne, go to it.
Well, they basically admitted that the big industrial players aren't actually paying this tax, it's you. So I would say we'd all agree with them. We have noticed that our ability to afford things is significantly changed. What we have is this stream of ideas of how the government comes up with policies that are going to make our lives better, make the world better, but they actually don't accomplish anything. So what did carbon tax accomplish? It just made more poverty. It made businesses struggle. It's been a hardship for everyone. I've been paying attention to climate action plans that are at the RDCK. This is a report that was given from their senior energy specialist in March of this year. So implementing all of this high efficiency stuff to reduce your carbon emissions and reducing and making it the sales of gas and oil to be eliminated by 2030 for all fossil fueled furnaces, etc. This will have the most impact on low-income residents. It is making median households energy poverty. It is making the cost of our energy source unaffordable. The requirements to have to change heating systems to be efficient electric is prohibitive. It's not possible for most homeowners. We don't have enough contractors to install these systems. Clean BC rebates are not adequate. We don't even have the supply to meet the demand. And when asked, RDCK staff and elected officials weren't even able to provide adequate information for questions from the public. I think it's time we stop implementing useless plans.
Thanks very much. Our next question. Creston has been identified as being at risk of drought. How would your policy support our agrarian community so that we have sustainable and consistent availability to water? Kelly, let's start it off with you.
Thank you, Rita. The Conservative program recognizes that agriculture and farming community is extremely important. Laying out policies that support them financially and structural support. Part of the program is to ensure that there is water for agriculture and to work on cutting the red tape again in order to get those type of policies into play. Things like investing in flood mitigation infrastructure and expanding water storage capacities on farms, and then protecting agricultural water rights in legislation. This is good news not only for the farmers, but it's also good news for the people trying to manage their diking districts, which they're doing on their own and they're struggling to have the resources and the money that's not coming from the province for them to deal with it. Water is very important, and I think with the Conservative platform, water is high on the agenda for protection.
Thanks, Kelly. Nicole, I'd like your comments on this question.
Thanks. Yeah, for over 50% of our food comes from California, a region already suffering from drought, and now we are seeing that the impacts ourselves. One of the best ways to not only be more climate resilient, but food secure is to ensure our local farmers are able to produce, and water is one of the main inputs for that. And I've been hearing all over Creston that water levels are dropping. People are really uncomfortable with their access to water, what they're paying for water licenses. I mean, you can frack gas and use more fresh water. 100 million liters for $2.50. Farmers need to be given equitable access to clean water. Farmers are on the front lines of climate change, and the provincial government must step up to support resilience of our food systems. We want to promote regenerative farming that requires less water. We would like to coordinate water use. We would like to help farmers already who are investing in reservoirs, continue with that, help farmers capture more water so that they can use it on demand. We would also like to see a ban in clear-cut logging, because we know that the slopes around Creston, Windle are experiencing lower water levels, and without the forests and trees to retain water at their source, things are going to dry out much faster. And in that vein, more water source protection efforts as a whole is very important. Again, channeling water in Creston, as Kelly mentioned, has been something that's been going on for a long time, but a lot of the reinforcements need reinvestment. We know our ecosystems need rehabilitation. All of these efforts, and working in partnership with the Lower Kootenay Band, as well as maybe even schools, to get people up to speed on how to manage the water locally and do it in a coordinated effort with a priority on growing food. Thank you.
Marie, would you like to comment?
Less than 5% of our province is in the agricultural lands. So what Creston is a valuable treasure that needs to be protected. And the way that that will happen is if your community identifies that the priority is the agriculture sector. If you do that, and your government leaders make sure that your agriculture ends up getting the priority on water over development, you will protect your agriculture. But this is why I was talking earlier about responsible infrastructure. If you have one side doing a bunch of development, not considering what it is that you really want to protect, you will lose. So your community, if it is identifying that your gift to us, which it is the provision of food that you supply, we as a region need to ensure that those farmers have every resource available to them over any other interest.
Thank you. Brittany, would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, so when I was Creston's Water Smart Ambassador, right at the very beginning, we knew that, or I learned that a lot of the purified water from the Creston treatment plant is going to irrigate fields, which is very expensive. And then when I became MLA, my very first summer, I got a call from a resident, and their entire community in the Creston Valley, their entire community was without water. And so I went to someone's home. There was a community meeting, and we were all in tears. To have a home that doesn't have access to water, it was an absolutely stressful situation. It also meant that their property values, if they were to leave, would sink. You need water. So the regional district has applied for a grant, and they've been provided that grant to do a feasibility study to look for a secondary water source specifically for agricultural needs in the Creston Valley. It's potentially going to be Kootenay Lake, but the feasibility study will have to be done first. We know that this is a thriving agricultural sector. We want to make sure that there is enough water. We don't want what's happening in the Creston, or what's happening in places like California to happen here. So we need to plan for it, and we need to work together, and we need to make sure that there's potable water in homes, and that agricultural producers have enough water to irrigate their crops. The Youth Climate Corps just got a grant from the provincial government, and it is to look at biochar. And so why this is relevant is they're using wood that it can't be used for anything else, and they can create it into biochar, and then that can actually be used as application in the forests or on agricultural land. And the biochar holds water, and so this is beneficial for our watershed as a really innovative solution with a forestry and an agricultural application. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final question on the climate action section. What is your adaptation plan for our continuing climate crisis? I'll start with you, Nicole.
Thanks, Rita. An adaptation plan is good if we can pay for it. So part of that would be to remove subsidies for fracking, to invest in things like forestry reform, like farming and food security, truth and reconciliation, and our relationships with First Nation need a lot of attention, and our ability to adapt will rely on our relationships in our own communities across nations. And if we are not putting in the effort to connect with each other, to care for each other, to think long term ahead to, how are we going to keep our water and air clean and accessible? These long-term plans need to be established, and government needs to be empowered to continue on working towards things that we need for generations to come, rather than short-term, 4-year, quick vote grabbing initiatives. And that's hard because we don't get reelected on long-term plans, but that's really what's needed if we are truly going to survive in the climate chaos that is coming. Thank you.
Okay. Corinne.
As Kelly mentioned earlier, actually the biggest contribution that we added to for carbon emissions was the forest fires. And it was interesting, 2023, I actually got this report from World Resource Institute. And the forest fires from 2023 released enough carbon emissions that we were tracking to be 4th in the world for the amount that we were releasing, so behind China, India, and US. The devastation of these forest fires are not just a matter of the destruction of our forests, but it also reduces the resources available that we could use for lumber, for wood products. And what we've had is decades of recommendations come through on how we should be managing the dead fuel in our forests, how we could better do thinning, selective logging, go for each slope uniquely, determining what kind of tree. There's qualified people in this region, ecologists, fire service, forest service, the lumber and timber sector. We have experts here that know what to do. But what we don't have is the ability to let them do it. We just keep having politicians somewhere else making decisions for how we manage our forests, and they're doing a lousy job. We're having devastation of these forest fires that could be totally avoided if we were managing things well. So if we want to deal with our role in this, the first thing we have to do is manage our forests, get all of these people working together and empower them locally to make the decisions on what happens to us, instead of always being directed by people who don't know what they're doing.
Thank you. Brittany.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm really proud of is when I was on city council, there was a community member that came to me and they had this vision. And it was the Youth Climate Corps. And so that vision, I was able to support them when it was just an idea. And what it is it's young people being paid a fair wage to do climate action work. And what this looks like is they're fire smarting around communities. They are, like I talked about earlier, the biochar project, that's the Youth Climate Corps. They are fire smarting around properties. They did it to the Caslow Town Hall when the fire was raging on the hillside, on the mountainside behind them. They are taking direct climate action, and I was able to get Ben Simoni, who's the executive director, to sit down with Premier David Eby, and because of that, in the last budget, we provided $3 million to the Youth Climate Corps to expand their work, and we have recommitted to that. And so that's a part of the climate action that we're taking. There's also forestry is absolutely huge. And so with the community forest, they're doing some really innovative things in order to fire smart their communities right here in the Creston Valley. They're protecting their watershed. We're also going to be reviewing BC timber sales, because I think a lot of people in this room agree that it's not quite working. We're working in partnership with First Nations to do things like prescribed burns. Fire on the landscape is natural, but we want it in the spring and in the summer when the fire risk is not high. And that is what First Nations have done since time immemorial to protect that. We are bringing them back. And lastly, the Argenta Fire Brigade, because they were trained and certified, had equipment, and mapped the watersheds, the water in their community, they were able to work alongside BC Timber Sale, or sorry, not BC Timber Sales, they were able to work alongside the BC Wildfire Service when they were behind the evacuation zone to protect their community. As soon as I saw Louis Bachner's article, I sent it to the Premier's office, to the ministers and their staff, and we are going to be implementing that across the province so community members like you here in the room are able to protect your communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly, your party's adaptation plan.
Thank you, Rita. Conservative Party is committed to setting high environmental standards in all sectors. So what I didn't go through, and you can check it out on my bio, is I was a firefighter for many years. My kids have seen that, they've grown up. My middle son is a volunteer fireman, but he's now also a medic. He served on the ground supporting the wildfire operations in BC last year, and he was deployed in Jasper this year. And we talk a lot about what his experiences are and what the risks and what he gets through all that experience. To add to what Brittany said, honestly, the Conservative Party would want to reduce catastrophic wildfire through comprehensive fire management review. Prescribed burns is one way of doing it. The Fire Smart program, that sort of activity that Brittany talked about, it works, but not enough people know about it. That is one way of protecting your property. Conservatives would like to see responsible energy transition through innovation and technology. Develop an energy strategy to offset the skyrocketing rates and unreliable services. Woodstock for fuel, for electrical generation. Hydrogen for consumption, for replacing combustion, and a combustion alternative for diesel engines. Advancing alternative energy that makes economic sense. Exploring nuclear energy and a feasibility study over a long-term period. These are all smart ways of getting into energy transition that we all agree that we want to get to. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Those are all our prepared questions on these topics, and I'm going to ask the candidates if there's any question that has not been asked that you wish was, or if there's any challenges you'd like to make to anything that any of the other candidates has said. Go ahead, Kelly.
One of the things that I really want to talk about, I want to talk about the mining and the forestry sector and those sorts of things, but there's a group of people who build Canada, BC, and are active members volunteering and contributing to our communities. That's our seniors. Our seniors, with a Conservative plan, we feel that restoring dignity and care for elderly in British Columbia is a high priority. Inhumane wait lists, shortage of home care services, skyrocketing housing costs. We need to cut wait times and procedures for seniors. We will be covering the cost of essential vaccines like for shingles and high dose flu shots. We want to put more parks and recreation in for seniors in communities. And we want to protect the safety of seniors from violent scams and digital fraud targeting of seniors. Those are real big problems today. And I just wanted to ensure that the seniors that are here tonight can appreciate that type of commitment.
Thank you.
Do any of the others have any comments they wish to make?
Should I go ahead?
Yes, go ahead, Kareem. Sorry.
Why would anybody decide to go independent? I like how the political parties are saying we want to increase healthcare, we want to support business, and yet these are the guys that have been in charge. And what's happening? It's falling apart. What we have now is political musical chairs going on. We have people just crossing the floor, going into another party, and telling you, guess what? We're going to save you. But it's whenever these political parties get too much power that things go bad. And right now we have 40 independents running across this province because there has been a rise in the population that the way that we're doing things is obviously not working. And it's time now to have representation that reflects what the people want, not prioritizing the party. My role for you is you. I am not going to be decapitated by a party because I speak out, because I challenge, because I expose, and because I say it's not good enough what's going on. This is what I can provide to you. I'm not only smart, I have healthcare, building, I have all the skills. You have the perfect candidate here. And what we need is we need across BC no majority government. We need minority government with at least 10 people that are in a place of independence or green to bring some rationality back to what is going on. You have the ability to contribute to that so that there is some control, there's some reason, and there's a little bit of restraint. And I'm also a person who gets things done.
Nicole has some comments to make.
Nicole has some comments to make.
I do, and thanks, Corinne, for the shout out. What I'd like to talk about is that since being in power, the BC NDP has increased our production of LNG and methane gas by 44%, a gas we use very little of here in BC. At the October 3rd election forum, NDP candidate Brittany Anderson said that government could not be held responsible for the projects and contracts inherited from previous governments. But the NDP has approved 2 large LNG projects since, and will have to expand fracking with thousands more wells for these new projects. We are pouring billions of dollars, billions with a B, into hauling all the gas and trees ripped from the ground for the benefit of retired politicians and foreign shareholders. Oh, what we could have invested in our communities with the $9 billion the NDP have invested in gas. The BC NDP approach to climate action is to prioritize short-term economic gains over the long-term viability of the environment and our ability to thrive. This results in profits for shareholders predominantly outside of our province, a lack of protection for old growth forests and biodiversity, and increased emissions and wildfires. The Greens' approach is to create policies that restore BC as a leader on climate change action and foster a green economy that results in accountability for BC's biggest polluters, protection for old growth forests and watersheds, and an increase in green jobs and clean economy. Thanks.
Brittany, do you have any comments?
Of course. So the BC NDP wasn't the first political party that asked me to run for them. It was actually the BC Greens. And it was because of the climate action work that I had done around the council table and at the regional district. I have a Master's of Science in Environmental Science and Policy, and I am a strong climate activist at the table. The reason why I wanted to run for the BC NDP is because we support people and we take strong climate action. And you can only do that if you are in government. So for me, when I'm fighting for climate action, I'm meeting with my colleagues 6 times a week when we're in Victoria. We meet 3 times on Tuesdays. We have these discussions about climate change, and I am one of the strongest voices in the room. If you want climate action and you want forestry reform, you need to elect the BC NDP, because the Conservatives do not believe in climate science. When Rustad was a cabinet minister, they were closing schools, closing hospitals, firing healthcare workers, and they literally let the largest forestry companies write the forestry legislation. We are changing that. We have, I just sat down with Suzanne Samard last week. If you don't know who she is a forest, she has a PhD in forest ecology, one of the strongest voices in forestry, and we're talking about forestry reform. And it absolutely needs to happen, and it is in this platform. And the reason why it's in this platform is because some of the work that I did as co-chair of Rural Caucus is highlighting the challenges that we all recognize and see. And so if you re-elect me as your BC NDP MLA, I will fight for our forests, for our ecology, for our biodiversity, but also for the people of Creston. We know we need long-term care beds. I'm worried the Conservatives get in, they want to cut $4 billion out of the budget. What do you think that's going to mean to the Creston Hospital? So please vote for supporting childcare, housing, more doctors, more nurses, and better supports for you here in the Valley. Thank you.
And we have time for a couple of questions from the audience. The first one. The province of BC has the worst debt ratio of any province in Canada. What provisions can you bring to bear to make the budget back in balance and help BC residents? Who wants to take this on? Anybody?
Let me start.
Go ahead.
We have such massive mismanagement. Okay, let's talk about who actually fired the healthcare workers, okay? Now, let's talk about the the hundreds of millions of dollars the NDP government gives the BC Nurses Union for no reason to enforce nurse-patient ratios, which they don't have the nurses for, and they actually aren't hiring us back either after the mandates have been rescinded. I bet you didn't know that. Here we have, over 3 years, $850 million going to a union who in return is doing all their election advertising. Okay? That is where your money goes. I have zillions of these kinds of examples because I do my homework and I go in and I see how you are being robbed and I am being robbed, and they give you the illusion that they're providing you good government, but underneath you are being robbed. I think I better stop because I can feel myself getting a little passionate here. But let me tell you, the amount of corruption that is in this government will never be cleaned up with just using political parties. We need to have people in government who are going to go in, not be intimidated, call out what's going on, and start the correction. If we don't do some responsible fiscal management now, we will lose everything. Now, I'm trying not to make this hysterical, but I want this to be very sobering. We are on the brink of all system collapse. And unless you have people who are watching, who know how to manage money, who know how it's getting leaked out, we will not be able to stop this hemorrhage. I know how to stop hemorrhages. I know how to keep things alive, and I'm going to do my best.
We're out of time. That brings us to the end of our all candidates meeting for tonight. Yes, you may. You've got 2 minutes. Fire away.
Okay, fantastic. So, first of all, we are committed. We have one of the lowest debt to GDP ratios in Canada. Right now, our economy is so strong that we're actually, because of the provincial, that's fine. We're actually having to transfer money to Ontario and Quebec because of federal agreements. It's something that we really don't want to do. You know, those are in place to support places like the Yukon, the Territories, and the Maritimes. And right now, because of their failing economy in other provinces, we're actually having to support them. We have not been getting the federal money that we deserve. Our Trans-Canada Highway from the federal government, they're not paying for that, but we know the work needs to get done, so we're doing it. David Eby is very effective at looking at systems that are challenging and fixing them. The dumpster fire that the Liberals, when Rustad was in government, that they created with ICBC, David fixed that. He is excellent at finding great solutions when there's very highly complex problems. Right now, you have a choice between a BC NDP government or a Conservative government. And a Conservative government is a huge risk. We have an entire section at the end of our platform that's talking about efficient and effective government, like reviewing BC timber sales, the health authorities, are they effective? Clearly, there's challenges that we're facing. David's been in as Premier for 2 years, and he's identified some of those challenges, like around housing, and he's finding solutions and fixing the problems. Like, we don't have enough doctors, well, we need to build a medical school. So we will continue to invest in communities and people, and if you'd like to talk to me about it more, I will be at the Good Company, the coffee place, tomorrow morning. You can find the information on my social media. Thank you so much, Creston. Thank you to our moderator and organizers for everything that they've done this evening for us, and thank you for attending.
Thanks. Nicole would like to make some final comments. Go ahead, Nicole.
Thanks. I was a little confused there. I thought we were answering a question. So thanks again to the Creston Valley Chamber for hosting this important event, and to all the candidates, media, and voters for participating. As I reflect on the challenges Creston faces and around the riding, I'm filled with hope because I know the strength and potential we have right here in the Kootenays. But we need leadership that is truly committed to protecting our environment, fighting for fairness, and building a future we can believe in. The BC Greens offer a kind of leadership that matches that. And that of Sonia Furstenau has been, as a mentor to me, has been really inspirational. She has helped us to bring respectful, collaborative approach that can break the old patterns of polarized politics and bring the focus back to people and the planet. Through my work in Nelson and across the Kootenays, I've seen what we can accomplish when we work together. I've advocated for watershed protection, local food security, and forest preservation, and I'm ready to bring that same passion and dedication to the BC legislature. Our communities deserve a future where young people have opportunities, where our elders are cared for, and where everyone has access to affordable housing, healthcare, and a clean environment. I will be a strong voice in Victoria, ensuring that the government is held accountable to you, not big corporations. We have a real chance for change in this election by electing me as your MLA. We can make sure our shared values of fairness, sustainability, and community care are fully represented. You will be able to hold me directly accountable. And we have an opportunity to create a minority government with the Greens with two things: the expertise in working collaboratively, combined with the power of an independent vote, or best of both worlds in party politics. As your MLA, I'm also committed to having a constituency office in Creston to make sure you have the access you deserve. Together, we can build a future that works for everyone. Thank you for coming tonight and for your patience with me being online, and I hope to earn your support on Election Day. I'm Nicole Charlwood, your BC Greens candidate for MLA. Thank you.
Go to it, Kelly. You can take us home.
Thank you, Rita. Thanks to everybody who's here tonight. Thanks to my colleagues that are very passionate. It's this experience has enhanced my personal journey immensely. It's really interesting to get the perspective of what's really important to British Columbians. In my other role, I have immersed a number of related key areas that I bring to the table: emergency management, physician, nurse, and recruitment, East Kootenay Regional Hospital Board, agriculture, food hubs, invasive species committee work, roads, watersheds, diking districts, local and regional economic development, wildfire and ecosystem conservation. These bring an important layer of experience, an important background that will lend itself well to the provincial lens. I'm not a yes man, and my reputation to challenge policy and business case detail is known to my colleagues and has been witnessed by many constituents, including the independent team. I question those things that need to be questioned to ensure that any policy being rolled out is solid and well thought through and benefits my constituents. As an elected official, as a member of the Legislative Assembly representing Kootenay Central, I can help make that common sense change the Conservative Party is offering. It takes a caucus. It takes caucus power, though, to make that change. I humbly ask for your support and allow you to represent me.
Thanks, Kelly. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. And I really appreciate your respect and your attention for the difficulties we had with technology and making sure that Nicole got time to be heard. So I would encourage you to hang around outside and meet with the candidates if you'd like to continue your discussions. Because we don't have time for all the rest of them, that's why. We have to be out of here by 9 o'clock. Sure, we'll be glad to do that. Thanks. So that's it for it. Don't forget, advance voting starts tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. I don't know how we turn this off.
Is this on? If anybody wants to post questions to me and send it to me on Facebook,
I will do a video and put it on social media for you, okay?
Can we post these questions on the website?
Yeah, if they get them to Mel, I can make sure they go up.
Okay.
Thank you. You did a great job.
Oh, thanks.
And